a minute.
Got
To
to
their
hit record.
website
I
first,
apologize.
and I thought it had all the preliminary information. They charge $8 for their meals, and the elementary schools had a different price, so. And the application was on there, and all the direction was there, so I didn't know what I would learn.
Well, to
And
give,
further.
I think to give a little context,
Yeah,
right now, the challenge we have is that we by law have to provide lunch to those that, I guess the best word, food insecure. We've got to make sure that they get lunch. We receive about, what, Janet, 14,000 in total from those
Yeah,
programs?
not even
Not
that
even
at
that,
that point,
sometimes
last
about,
year,
it's
yeah.
11 or 12, I was going on the numbers here, but
Yeah.
it's very small. And the cost to deliver this and the debate of the quality of the meals to fit the federal program is really difficult. And the transfer that's in the budget now is that there's a mismatch in the revenue, even though that isn't where we focus, but there's a mismatch, which would have to come out of surplus, or we would have to call a special meeting to make up that difference if we weren't sort of in the range. And so the question is, I think, to me, the question is there value in us really exploring, could we deliver a lunch program and ensure that everyone got fed, and try to work within the dollars we've got and provide something reasonable, and be willing to step out of the federal program, because that's where we have the best shot of actually being able to pull something off that would work. Recognizing that we would still be supporting and using the same model to deliver food to the kids that would be eligible if we were part of the federal program. So I feel like it's important that we get a direction from the board if we're going to put a lot of time and energy into this to try to put something together. And then I guess, trying to create a timeline, because we might, in doing that, if we got to March and we really saw there was a deficit, we'd probably have to make a floor amendment to address that gap. So I just wanted to highlight the importance of this and get the board's response to that. I don't know, is it my,
no, that's the summary of the conversation that we had in committee, so.
Yeah, what was our loss when we ran our own kitchen? Like when Paul was doing it, do you know, were we losing money or were we?
We always lost
revenue?
money, always
Yeah.
lost money. But I think that the last year that was somewhat normal was 2019.
Yeah,
And I think we transferred 23,000 in 2019. We could go back and look, but I'm pretty sure that was the expenditure side or the revenue
that's
side.
what you had said the last time.
Yeah.
but-
And in COVID last year, it was 52,000 we transferred in. Because we had a loss of revenue of, just in sales, reduction in sales.
right.
Yeah, and then the loss of auctions was tremendous because people used to be able to have salad bar, then you couldn't. And so there was a lot of loss in sales.
But eventually we'll like get back to normal. So I guess it's like, we're thinking about moving to Fresh Picks, right? And pulling out of the national lunch program because, I mean, largely, I don't know anybody who has a child in the school this year. Sarah's eaten the food. I get lots of complaints from my kid, from other people. A lot of people miss Paul desperately. My understanding though from Sarah, because you have experience with the Hanover High School lunch, is that it's pretty good. Or
I think
reasonably
this
good,
is
better.
anecdotal data, and
I see.
are we, hang on, is this the time to discuss this?
Oh, sorry.
That's all, like, I didn't know if this was,
Okay,
but
Put it on the agenda. I'm recommending you.
That we
Put it on the
put in.
agenda and
I
maybe.
see.
this was
All
more
right.
of a point
Like
of
this
order,
information
not that I
for
don't want to
students.
participate,
No,
but I
no,
just
no,
don't want to
that's fine.
bog
I
us down.
didn't realize we were discussing now.
Well,
But that's fine.
we need to.
You should discuss it at
We
some
need
point.
to have a discussion, and maybe if we end up having a special meeting, that could also be, because we need some time to get the information that we would need to be able to present
Yeah.
what we would do if we did an alternate concept. you know, so we're just putting it out on the table because
Yep, just
this
recording. it.
just popped up.
To
We
think
weren't
about
aware
it.
that
But
this
at the last meeting, we approved to put out the RFP for bids on
We
food,
did.
right?
Right, but we
Yes,
didn't
for next year.
then Janet did the revenue budget,
And was
and
like-
that's when this really came to light.
I
that
see,
we were
okay.
out of
So
whack.
it is a go back to the drawing board, or is it a,
I think that, well,
No,
if I can say,
Okay.
I think that the question then becomes, what RFP are you doing? Are you doing an RFP and requesting that the company conform to National School Lunch Program guidelines, or are you doing an RFP to have an open
so
source
we need to,
menu?
right, and so we have to,
We could talk about.
why
it
don't we
next
just put
week.
this on the agenda?
We'll do it at
Yeah.
our next meeting.
And just in, if we have the opportunity to chat and get other info from elsewhere, the programs like Fresh Picks and I forget the.
Abby
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 Group.
Group, they will be our a vendor and not participate in National School Lunch Program.
Yeah, you can have contracted
Hanover.
service without the national. school.
Hanover uses Fresh Picks,
Yeah.
They are not. engaged
and they're
with it.
not in the national program, right? That's
So
why
you have that option.
we wanted to
yeah.
go and understand that better, but you know, we can't go down that path.
I mean, I guess the issue is like waning and not talking about this, like essentially the issue is that we need to add money to the budget. And we're gonna approve a budget tonight and move it to a public meeting on February 2nd, and we're not gonna have the opportunity to modify that. Which if we're
We
in
would
a
have to do a
deficit, we
floor
would have to
amendment.
have, yeah, oh, that's true, we could
Yeah.
do something for the
I think
floor.
that's where we are at this point.
Yeah, so I think that's probably our only option.
Yeah, that's why I was
That's
saying, you
why I
know, we were
brought it
trying to
up.
avoid
Yeah.
changing the bottom line because we had already gone quite a
Yeah.
ways in the process.
But if we can't put something together, we're gonna probably have to make a floor amendment. So I guess I don't want to wait
So that's
too long. I wasn't trying to get into.
No, that's fine, yeah.
Specifics, it's just, what is the guidance? Do you want us to try to go and spend time? Because this will be work on somebody's part.
We'll do work on somebody's part. Let's, well, we talked a lot about it already. I think let's plan to do it at our next meeting. It sounds like we'll have to have a special meeting.
Yeah.
So I think we
I mean,
will.
we could talk to Hanover, if they're
We can-
charging $8 for lunch,
But we
anybody
can
want
figure
to
it out.
think what, like, are we really gonna charge $8 for
Well,
lunch?
that's a high school lunch.
That's a high school.
Yeah.
All right,
Let's not
okay.
get into the
Did you
nitty-gritty now.
have any more for your report?
Yes.
No, I don't, because they're carried out in the other parts of the agenda, so. I'm good,
Okay,
Thank you.
So let's move on. Elise, do you have a principal's report?
I just have two things. Just to update you on the substitute situation, where we have Leslie Gannon as our on-call sub, working out fantastically. She has a lot of experience. She's been a teacher. She easily goes from kindergarten through grade 8. Very professional. She reports out to teachers how the class went and a detailed report each time, and it's working out great. That's not saying we don't have our challenges. We've had 6 or 7 staff members out on a fairly regular basis. There are some lighter days, but on our bad days, it's 6 to 7. It's pushing our limits. We're patching where we can, but it's tenuous. We're probably close to closing a few times. It does make it a little complicated to even close because Green said that we have to let the transportation people know by 5:30 a.m. And some of our people have to let us know later because of they're finding out late from their daycare or whatever. So there we are. We have people that are covering each other. I know the MOU is moving forward. That's the substitutes. Right now, 3 staff members, Kate Cook, Jen Wilcox, and I are taking an instructional coaching course using professional development grant money. Kate's our math interventionist, if you know, and Jen's our reading interventionist. Not only do they provide specialized instruction to students not meeting grade level benchmarks in math and reading, but they often provide professional development to our teachers on best practices in instruction in their subject areas. We felt there was a real need for coaching in our school alongside evaluation. We have a well-developed process in place for teacher evaluation at the Lyme School that involves 3 administrative observations of a person's teaching, pre and post conferences with that teacher, and written reports that include commendations and recommendations for improvement. But it's tricky to just get improvement just by writing recommendations for improvement. So we feel that's important to like grade an individual performance every 3 years, and every year for our new staff for the first 5 years. But we often hope that leads to improvement, but we didn't have the formal support structure in place for teachers to work on these improvement strategies. So we're beginning to explore more teacher-coach collaboration, and that we hope will lead to increasing teacher effectiveness of coaching rather than just relying on teacher evaluations. So our coaching courses follow set protocols and questioning and clear goals for teacher improvement. And it involves a lot of observations of instruction and really a lot of dialogue with teachers on where their successes and challenges are. So we're hoping that this can become part of a continuous improvement of the Lyme School. Who's doing that again? Kate Cook, Jen Wilcox, and I. Okay,
Thank you, Elise.
that's all I have.
Thank you. Katie, do you have anything for a COVID report?
She wrote, I have to step away for a minute.
Okay.
I don't have much of an update for the board, but we continue to follow the local and regional epidemiology and positivity rates. We continue to align ourselves with current NHDHS guidelines.
Excellent. I think that's good, right?
Sounds awesome.
Faculty staff report? Tom or Kate, do you guys have a faculty staff, or I don't know if there's any, if there's another teacher doing one. So if not, then Janet for a financial report.
Great.
Sorry, I couldn't get to my phone. We do not have a report. Sorry about that.
All right, go ahead.
No, he says he
No.
did.
Oh, you don't have
Yeah,
one,
no,
okay,
nothing. Sorry.
that's all right, thank you.
This is Lisa Dameron.
Yes,
Hi, sorry, I couldn't get my phone to unmute. I just want to encourage the board to encourage parents and each other to continue to check our school website because teachers are posting weekly, and we've got some pretty neat stuff going on in our school despite our challenges, as Elise noted, and just a few minutes ago in her report. So we encourage you all to take a look at what's going on there, and see what's happening in our classrooms, because despite COVID and having to cover for one another, our teachers are doing an outstanding job. So please take a look and enjoy.
thank you, Lisa.
Okay. Okay, so I sent you the regular reports, the financial report, expenditure report, the ADS report. I also sent the warrants. I guess you guys should be approving this and signing it. I don't have the final. It's all been sent to the DRA as far as the budget's concerned, but I don't have the final signature page because that comes from once they approve everything. So that's sort of on hold, but all the numbers in the articles, it would be great if you guys could approve that tonight. That'd be in the budget discussion a little bit later. On the revenue side, so on our general fund, we have unanticipated revenue at this point of $32,670. That is basically coming from individual tuition. Our food service line, I tried to adjust that a little bit. So our October, November and December revenue has not come in from the SSO program yet, but I did mark down the total that it will be. So we'll receive $39,742 in revenue from the child nutrition program for those 3 months, because remember, we're in that waiver situation. And we won't be able to get that next year unless the USDA extends that waiver program. It won't be an option. In the grant section, I did put in this, we have 2 expenditures in small rural schools grants out there. It was chippers and it was a for fortified lock and safe locks. And then we had some Title II money coming in for professional development that's already happened. A little bit of Title IV money for technology for line fiber, actually. And then as you get farther down, IDAB monies to date and ESSER 3 grants without the additional,
Was that such a last year?
no, it was ESSER 3 for without the additional
Without the
dollars
additional
for the construction piece, because it hasn't been approved yet, so that's not on this revenue report. So total unanticipated revenue is $81,323. And then if we move on to the expenditure side, so our high school numbers have
Yeah,
changed.
just to clarify, is that the only piece of ESER 3 that's remaining, that's outstanding?
So ESER 3 is 130,000
Yeah.
total.
Is it 153, 552?
What about the
The rest of it.
remainder of that?
So it hasn't all been allocated
Yeah.
yet,
Take a look over here.
and it isn't completed, so the grant
There's
hasn't
more to
been
spend.
approved.
There's more money to spend.
21.
Yeah.
21,000.
But those two construction projects are what
The windows of the two windows.
Bree
and the
was talking
doors.
about, that they've been pushing back on, the state's been pushing back on, so they may not pay for those two projects. So that's not in the snap date.
We don't know why.
They just don't think it qualifies for the grant.
Well, I don't know. We haven't gotten any information on what's needed. I mean, it should qualify for the grant. I mean, because they were cited for school safety, but whether that's gonna be funded or not, I don't know.
So if we move on to the expenditure report, the high school instruction line, we had some changes in high school. We had 2 residency issues, and we had 2 students that are in Rivendell that we didn't have budgeted for. So that has changed our amount in high school. So now we're looking at a $91,000 deficit in high school that you could draw from trust. And then as we go down and through the report, when we get down to, of course, the food service line, that 154,941, that number is our current deficit using the encumbrance tool in the general fund. And then on the revenue side, I'm sorry, the rest
Can
of
I
it.
ask one question?
Yeah.
Did we for this school year anticipate pulling from the high school trust?
Yeah, so
I
high
forgot what
school
that number
trust,
was.
high school trust was flatlined as a budget
Yeah,
item. So there was going to be a draw, but what that draw was gonna be was unknown. So you had students that were going to private school, you didn't know whether they were coming back. And then you also had an increase in tuition that was not accounted for in the budget process. So there was gonna be a draw, we just didn't know what it was. Gonna be. And I don't know, I think the finance committee might be able to speak to that more.
I have to go back to the May meeting PowerPoint.
I can find that if you want. What's it, 143? More than that.
no, that's continued, is that, we'll find the number, Elizabeth, at some point. That's
Okay.
fine.
So if we have 154,941 as a deficit, we're planning on drawing from post-retirement benefit trust of 36,000. If we draw from high school trust at 91,435, and then maintenance building trust at 33, that will bring in additional revenues of 160,435, which will give us a general fund projected balance of $5,493. Which is really close. And then we had the ADS report. I don't know if anybody had a chance to take a look at this or if anybody has any questions on this. So this is our actuals year to date without being encumbered, except for actual purchase orders that are in the system. We do have quite a few like invoices that come that don't have purchase orders, so those can't be anticipated in any way.
The anticipated withdrawal was 243.
Yeah, 240, that's a big journal. I just didn't want to have that.
So in the general fund budget line, you can see on the ADS report on page 7 of 8 up at the top, it's giving us a $28,000 being under budget by $28,000. So there's a bit of a swing there, but that's really close as well, especially in January. That means, and this only shows actual encumbrances and actual expenditures to date. Okay, and then maybe any questions on those? Teacher stipend report, so this is through the 14th, I'm sorry, 21st of January. So total expenses to date is $7,183.06. And most of that's coming from the SST student support team. We do have the election warrant. We only got 3 signatures on the election warrant, and
Yeah, I need to sign
you
that.
guys can sign this tonight so that we can post it, because people only have a couple of days to register if they want to be in.
All right. Thank you. So moving to our business requiring action. For the first one is school district structure, and I would like to make a motion to hire a superintendent at 0.6 FTEs and a full-time principal. Do I have a second? Second by Greenway. So, open for discussion. One of the things that was asked at the last meeting was to share the opinions that had been asked. I asked everyone who we did get opinions from. The LEA has agreed that, well, and everyone agreed that it's all right for me to share their responses. The LEA, their request and their choice on structure was, or preference, I should say, was for a part-time superintendent, a full-time principal, as well as the academic director. I think Elise when I spoke to Elise, it was supportive of the same, whatever the teachers wanted. And Nikki as well was the same, was basically the same. I think Colleen had recommended as well the superintendent and principal model. And Janet, I think you were kind of, as long as the job is done. It was really good. It was all right either way. And correct me if I'm wrong. So I know that we shared at our last meeting, we had a lot of, we had several people that gave opinions. I wanted to know if there's any other further discussion about structure moving forward. And if there are any questions, other comments that anyone has?
I think the only comment I'd like to make is that I'm sorry that we didn't have a more robust conversation about what, thinking past the titles and the structure and more about what it is that we're trying to accomplish and achieve as a district for outcomes. And I think we've lost a tremendous opportunity to really think creatively about the culture that we want going forward and what kind of place we want our students to be learning in, because we got very focused on slots versus thoughts. So that's all I have to say. I'm that. I think we short-shrifted the process.
Is there anyone else?
I think related to process, we need to take a closer look at the job descriptions for the administrative team. and just make sure that there's clarity there, because even at our last meeting, there was some new information that just came up in terms of who's doing what related to responsibilities. And I think for anybody coming into the position, as well as for the committee that is responsible for making a recommendation, there needs to be clarity on roles and responsibilities.
Can I add to that? I would like the board to consider, there's a job description that was just handed to us today that is on file in the SAU office. And I'd like the board to consider looking at the roles and responsibilities with what drafts of job descriptions that we have here at the school, of people that have worked in these jobs and for a few years, that what tasks really need to be done. So maybe there's a general job description, but at the SAU office, but there are more detailed job descriptions that we've worked carefully on.
I think I put out one that you guys had worked on. I did put it into the folder.
They seem to not be official enough at this point to be considered. So I want to just put a plea out there that we will be.
I would hope that part of the process would be to really look at this.
I would hope so.
I didn't make that comment, but I agree with Phil and you. I guess I was thinking higher level about the district, not the hiring process, and looking at those roles more closely, because I have a gazillion notes on that part myself. So I hope that that isn't what that action item is implying.
Which
The
action?
structure. Because there's a vote required. I'm hoping it's not assuming that these job descriptions are what.
No. I mean,
They
I
haven't
think
been
that-
revisited
I think
together with the admin
we
team.
can open the discussion for job descriptions. Just the first part is just the structure.
That's what I thought. That's why I didn't respond to that.
Is it, I may, there, I don't know if the board has agreed on any one thing, so I'm trying, I don't know exactly what to say, but I thought there was consensus that we have to have a principal, we have to have a school building administrator, and I thought the purpose of this was simply to make sure we were moving that process along. So if we made a choice and we all agreed that we have to have, it's so critical, and we have to get that job out now, it's January, that makes part of the decision about the structure for us already. So I'm wondering if Elizabeth is saying we're not quite sure if what we want for is that what you're saying, Elizabeth? Or
I have that question. I did think that the agreement was that we would hire a principal, and we hadn't really gone further with the conversation, but it does presume that we've got to have superintendent licensure. How we put that together, we never really discussed in my mind.
I think, I don't think I agree. I think the one thing we did agree on is the principal 100%, like we've got to hire that.
Okay. Well, so the motion on the table is for 0.6 superintendent and a full-time principal. Is there any further discussion?
If we were to vote, this is a question, if we were to vote and say, oh, yes, we'd like a superintendent, but the question of how much, maybe how does that work?
It's a top line probably, right?
It's a money issue, right? Because
It's a money
0.6 would be
issue.
more money than a 0.4, but Elise and Elizabeth have talked about responsibilities, and this is where you put more responsibilities on any one person. I mean, we can be shuffling things around however we want. I think
we budgeted for a 0.6 superintendent, and in terms of the responsibilities, I don't see the superintendent's responsibilities having a lot of fluidity. The person whose job description is gonna have fluidity is that principal. Because we have an academic director, and we have somebody running special education already, right? So but I don't think the superintendent and the role that that person will play I don't think we have any redundancy for that in our outside, Corinne's interim, right?
right.
And so we don't have any redundancy for a superintendent. whether 0.6 is enough is a giant question to me. Whether we'll be able to hire somebody who wants a 0.6 position is another like looming question. It's not guaranteed that we're even going to find a principal to hire. If anybody saw the Valley News this weekend.
If, I have one more question. If we vote on, we're definitely we want to move forward with putting an ad out for a principal, and we are in a process and we're interviewing, whatever the team is interviewing, say 5 people. If one person happens to be that unicorn, that a potential district administrator again that has super, what would we do? Are we tied already? I mean, I guess my question is what ties us to?
I think that we can always, I would assume that we could always bring information back to the board and, and change. I don't think, nothing is necessarily set in stone.
Yeah, and I think
Yeah.
also in my mind, I mean, as it goes in any job or administrative structure, right? People have strengths and other people have other strengths. And it's not like we have to cast an exact mold for the people we are trying to find. We're trying to find someone who's the right fit for the Lyme School and responsibilities, except as that they're defined legally, of course, for the superintendent position, but responsibilities will move between administrators as they always have. I'm not fearful for that. I'm fearful of finding the right person that fits the school. And for that, we need to get out there. We need to start getting candidates.
That's what I've said too.
But
Like, we
wouldn't
need
the
to
school
open
be
this
leading
door
the
and walk
principal
through it.
process though? I mean, even if we vote to say, yes, you gotta get that principal position out, isn't the school the lead on this? We're not. We hired, Karina's our hire.
Well, so the
How are we
how-to will be
involved?
the next part of discussion, but not part of this motion necessarily.
Okay.
So can I make an amendment to the motion or propose an amendment that we don't mention an FTE on the superintendent? Because the person who applies for the job we might have discussions with other districts who are interested in sharing, but we would be we would hire the 1.0 and share out part of the other so that we're not confined to it.
All right.
But we
have a
don't have
second on
the capability, do we?
What?
Well, we don't know if somebody is,
Are we like dangerously close?
Commercial Plainfield and all their sharings, and they have, I think, maybe 5 definitely people who are sharing. Some of them are done by Cornish and they charge Plainfield, some of them are done by Plainfield and they charge.
That's not what I'm questioning. My point is that we're very close to that limit of 50 for the Affordable Care Act. I think that is the concern.
But it leaves us open for flexibility.
I do agree we
Not
need that
knowing
flexibility.
What else might shift in the meantime?
I mean, the only problem that I would see is that if we are pretty sure we don't want a 1.0, we're gonna get a lot of people applying that, aren't going to want the job. And
Sure,
what's the
we don't
wasted
have to-
effort there?
We don't have to post it as a 1.0, but with a set motion with specific language saying 0.6, then we can't deviate from that, in my opinion. So why tag an FTE with the position?
Oh, so you're just saying, making an amendment saying we would like to put out we think we need to have a superintendent and a principal.
Superintendent and principal.
That those are the positions that need hiring rather than a district administrator. We're making that choice. That's all.
I'm amending the motion 0.6 superintendent plus principal to just superintendent plus principal. That's my.
so we had a
proposed amendment.
second on that amendment.
What does Kareem think about?
I'm just rethinking, taking out the 0.6. I mean, if I looked at an ad for a superintendent position, I'd assume it was full-time. And then you get your whole package together. It's quite an extensive package to apply. And then you find out it was a 0.6, and that's not what you're really looking for. And I'm trying to think, is there language you could put that says estimated 0.6 or?
You mean when you're advertising?
Yeah, when you're advertising, because you don't want somebody who's looking for full-time to apply because it doesn't specify. But you want to leave yourself open, so you've got some flexibility. So is there a language that you could put in that position that just says, maybe it just says part-time? And part-time can be 1 day, 2 days, 3 days, 4 days, whatever you determine. Maybe that's,
So we could make the amendment to say a part-time superintendent.
does that make sense to you, Hayes? Or that
It does, but I don't see the reason to tether the motion on our district structure to the job advertisement at this.
Oh,
point.
yes, okay, so I'm thinking the job advertisement.
I think we can, that's again, the separate.
Yeah, okay.
Conversation.
So maybe, so a part-time superintendent and a full-time, or just leave it as a superintendent and
My
principal
proposal
structure.
was superintendent plus principal.
All right,
It can be full-time, it can be part-time, it can be 0.6, it can be 0.8. That's not what we're deciding right now. It's
How do you
just the structure.
reconcile that with the budget that is being recommended?
Well, we might end up with a 0.6, right? But.
But
at
what
least
if you
we're
end
not
up with a
Limited.
1.0? There's no funding for it. You're gonna have to cut programs.
Well, again, we don't know what will happen between now and the time that we are actually looking to make the hire. You know, I'm not saying that we will post the job tomorrow for a full-time superintendent. I'm just saying this leaves us open and maybe, and I know that we're plugged in there for 0.6 for a particular dollar amount. You know, that's also negotiable.
All right, yeah. So you're thinking
I just don't want to be bound by emotion.
in terms of your
mentioned-
motion, but then if you decide to advertise, which I think, once you decide which way you want to go, however that is, then it's all right for the ad to advertise part-time,
Right, because
regardless of the motion.
because I think that I've heard before, we, have this advertisement and then we spread our wings, ask around, what if we find another district who's looking to
You're
share?
right, it does
right
leave it
away.
open, the option.
And
open.
so we can't hire a 1.0 because our motion said 0.6.
I see, okay.
But are we bound that way?
We might be if we
if we vote
vote on
on
it.
it.
Right.
So the point is,
That makes
just take
sense
that
to me now.
0.6 out of this motion and amend it as
Gives you
As the
flexibility.
structure.
as
Just
recommended
having-
and then seconded by Vince. So all we have to vote on it.
With that, so, but are we gonna lose clarity? That's all, like, is making, I understand Hayes' point.
Potentially.
And I think we
Maybe that'll be the
understand,
next step.
maybe the minutes can reflect that we feel that at this point in time, we can accommodate 0.6 superintendent in the budget, but understand that it could be a shared position. There could be other shifts we cannot foresee at this time.
Yeah, so I am sensitive, Hayes, to the point of, if we go out and post and somebody, like, we might mislead people, but I think that what we, as a board, probably need to do is separate the two issues, because I guess the process of actually posting for hiring versus the opening the gates to start the hiring process are two separate things.
Agreed. I mean, just because I say super plus principal doesn't inherently mean full-time. super.
Yeah. Right.
I think all this motion is saying, I'm sorry, I've spoken to you. Thomas. Let other people speak.
So the motion was amended. So
Can you read that?
repeating back, Roger, would you repeat it? Repeat it back to
You
us.
gonna blame me on this thing?
Yes.
All I had was to hire 0.6 FTE superintendent and a full-time principal model. That's what I had down.
Well, Hayes amended.
With the
So if you
amendment,
want to have the amendment, just removing the FTE, the
Correct.
0.6 FTE, then it's essentially to hire a superintendent and a full-time principal model.
all right, so all in favor of the superintendent and full-time principal model? Yeah.
All right,
And then
You're
nays?
welcome, Gino.
Arna and Glenn Shaw.
Abstain.
Sorry, say that
I'm
again.
gonna abstain.
Okay, and Glenn Shaw abstains.
501.
Five,
511.
Who voted against?
I did.
Sparta.
Sparta.
Thanks. Only one set eyes.
All right, so the next would be the timeline.
Yeah, the timeline I have is pretty much can be used for any type of position you want. It didn't really matter, but I did want to sit and wait before we went out to get the resources. And so working with Primex, who does support school districts when they're doing searches so that they follow the legalities and the questions are all scripted and whatnot. I did work with Tony Flowing at Primex. We kind of worked through some draft timeline for the positions. And again, they're labeled superintendent principal coach, but they don't have to be. So I made hard copies. So I'm gonna pass them around. There's 12, so there should be enough for every person here that wants one. Keep them from this, and generally, to start the ball rolling, the staff person at Primex would conduct a meeting session with the board and provide some guidance to kind of guide you on procedure, to elicit any questions you might have that you can add to the bank. One of the things you might add is, you know, can you come up with critical issues for this new position will face? What are some potential roadblocks? These are just examples. What's the essential knowledge, skills, and abilities necessary for this position? What are some of the behaviors and attributes that the board seeks when they fill these positions? What would be the qualifications of the ideal candidate? So these are questions that she'd like to meet with you via a Zoom. And I asked her if she could record it in case whatever date, if you come up with a date the next week. If somebody can't make it, then the session is recorded, so you have that discussion and hear it. Working from the timeline backwards, when you look at the principal one, it would ideally start July 1, usually a contracted administrator, July 1 to June 30th. And working that backwards so that you need time to advertise, then you collect resumes. And she suggested myself and the board chair, we go through that first preliminary application review, kind of put the piles out there like a yes or no, a maybe. And then a committee established to be able to do first round interviews during that week. And that 2 top finalists would go to the whole board for that process of interview. No rhyme or reason on trying to pick a committee. It doesn't matter to me. It just threw out some arbitrary names and people. Definitely to be determined. I don't think I should be determining the entire committee. I mean, you know your area. That's why there's a lot of question marks there. And hopefully a contract offer by April 1st, because teachers usually get their renewal contracts second week of April. So just a timeline, it certainly can be amended to what you would like, but it's a first draft of that. You have a question?
Yeah, why wouldn't the whole committee see all of the resumes?
I'm just going on the recommendation of Primex.
Okay,
They
that's just
suggest a
Primex.
preliminary,
Okay.
but that's probably with the understanding that you're gonna have 15 to 20 resumes. And whoever looks at those resumes has got to be in a secure place. Those resumes don't leave the table, they don't leave the room.
Right, obviously.
So it helps to narrow down. She's suggesting maybe 5 to 7 to interview.
So I think seeing the range though is an important process. I don't know, having done. a lot
Oh,
of
yeah,
hiring.
yeah.
I'm concerned in having it be so narrow who picks what you get to see.
Yeah,
And you gotta
I
trust
certainly
the
can
process.
withdraw from that. I don't have a problem with it, or we can add another board person.
Yeah.
You can determine that. It's not set in
It's
stone.
not
That's
set, okay.
just sharing the recommendations from finance, but I don't have an opinion about it either way. I've done them several times. The superintendent one is more timely, only because I suggested that you try to find somebody who's possibly available to start on May 1st or whenever they can start. And then that moves the process, because you're going out at this time is probably, I don't know, I think I've seen probably 5 or 6 already posted around the state. So those ads are going out fast and furious. So I want you to have that best opportunity again for your discussion on how you want to move forward. I think the critical piece is to set a date where you can have that work session with Tony Flowin. I also pulled out the job descriptions. I shared it with the administrative team, but we did not have a minute to be able to go over them. Their board approved job descriptions, and I attached the ed rules that go with it, which you don't have any flexibility in that.
What do you mean board approved?
These job descriptions were approved December 21st, 2015. And this one was the same thing. So at some point in the history of the district, the board
Yeah, but we
reviewed.
can't just default to what was. I think we have to create what is, right?
Well, you start with what you have on the books.
I know, but we had a different structure. So those are.
This is from the old structure.
This is, yeah, I just pulled out what
I
you
know, but I'm
had.
just- I mean, I'm just saying that I think a step is that we've got to sit down and create the job.
Well, I haven't gotten there yet.
Oh,
I'm just
I
telling
know,
you,
but
this is what was on the district books. So this is what we pulled out, because it's like policy, right?
right, but
You know-
what we have more current, because we had a different structure, but we should see what those tasks were too.
And
not
maybe I
those.
just, maybe I just didn't see your most districts, but I had all the job descriptions that were filed at the SAU, and I pulled the superintendent and the principal.
I know.
So basically,
That's
there
what
was
was
no
talked
DA
about.
job
Yeah, we had
description
it
at
out.
the SAU.
I can pull out, I mean, you can look at the others as well if you want to cross them. I'm
Yeah,
not saying this
I
is,
think it's just important that we look at, and that we get to current needs and what is important. I mean, it's true.
Elizabeth, I understand. I agree
Anyway.
with you, haven't.
yeah, this is not,
we've
I'm not
kind of
telling you this
done
is locked in stone.
some
I'm
of
telling you
Okay.
what was
I
on
just
the
didn't
books.
want those to get posted without us having a chance. to
Well,
talk.
I'm not gonna post the job description yet because there has to be some edits to it. Even if it's just in the terminology pronouns of the him and the her. Okay, so, I mean, we were going to go over this, we didn't have time today. There's no way to get around the ed rules of 302, which describe the duties of a superintendent by the New Hampshire rules. And then the district had one of the superintendent's role. And so in reviewing that, I mean, it's very applicable. Again, for me, I would just correct the him, her. There was one point in the duties related to the school board that I would say number 6, coordinate scheduling and agenda with the board chair. But I have no other recommended edits, and it's up to you, whatever else you want to edit. But I started with what you had already on the books, and same for your principal jobs. I put up what you had. And there was in the opening paragraph, a he assigns, directs, and evaluates. That needs to be a he, she. And, I mean, I didn't have any other recommendations, but again, you got to reference the ed rules on the duties of the school principal, because there's no flexibility in that. So whatever you put in your job descriptions is definitely up to you. But it's going to make a difference when you do post the positions, when you decide to post these 2 positions. And you better have a job description ready, because otherwise you're not posting a position with no job description, so. You figure that out. Okay.
But I guess I wanted to have the most current job description, which was the DA and an academic director. So there's roles and tasks and there's this. So I just feel like we need to, if our timeline is this tight, we need to get the group together and get this done ASAP, I guess, so that we have a working document that we can, or documents,
Yeah.
since they're 2 different, and get those out. These are super, in my mind, dated, and so they haven't even been active.
No, but they're on the books. I mean, you can
Well, I
revise
think
them, rewrite them,
Right,
collate them. You can do whatever you want with them.
Who normally revises them? Is it the board?
What?
Is it the board that normally revises the principal and the superintendent descriptions? Or do we just default to the ed rules in the New Hampshire statutes?
Well, we had a DA job description. That's the most current one. That's what we've been working
But I
on.
think what's
And
there
we
is-
did create
So, but
that.
your concern then is that there might be things within the DA
There
job
might be.
description that have been, that aren't going to be represented in either the super or the principal job descriptions when we separate.
It
it.
might be.
I think we have to look at it and look at what the whole team
Is it
and the
me?
different
I
deliverables.
think that's what Sarah's asking is who is the typical person to do this?
Yeah,
Is
for
it
me,
typically the superintendent?
It starts there, but my experience is with a personnel committee.
Okay,
I mean, I'm one person, you know what I mean?
But
we
we have
wanna have
the
another pair.
administration. Part of it. I think the admin team would be. very
Yeah, that was
critical
on our admin team agenda today. We did not get to it.
And didn't get to it.
Nope.
Well, I mean, I feel like the admin team is the one that brings it to, I guess, us saying this is what we think
Recommend.
is best. Am I wrong?
I would
You wanna
think that
decide
we
the
would have
superintendent need.
a
You
good
wanna
handle on
divide
the-
the superintendent job.
the
description.
responsibilities, especially since we've had an academic director position for 4 years. There's some shifting, and I think, yes, that we would have a good handle on the responsibilities, and we should revise it and bring it to the personnel committee.
Do we not have the academic director job description on the books in the SAU?
Oh, no,
Yes, you do.
we do.
You have
Okay,
that. You have the
sorry,
That
job
so
also
so
said
suddenly I was like,
revised.
wait a second, is that the problem? But no, it's not.
That should be revised now that there's not a DA with the academic director.
Okay,
Well, so moving forward, could we have administration look through the job descriptions, forward it to the personnel committee, and the personnel committee could try to meet within the next week? Is that a possibility, guys?
Depends on when we get it.
I have job descriptions for you right here that the admin team has worked on with the LEA, with their,
Do you
Oh,
have,
so that's
can you
the-
make copies of that so that we can all see it?
Is this the structure? I think this is the one that you had sent me, right? Elise? So this is in the folder. It looks like this?
no,
Oh, it's different, okay.
that was trying to just see it
To
in a
map it out.
span of things, but then it was put into.
and then my question is, so we've just talked about process, and I know that we still haven't voted on the motion. So we have job descriptions to have the personnel committee take a look. The committee then sends it to the whole board. Does it need to be voted, or is it just, the personnel committee's like, yeah, that's good, and then we move on, or
We do have to
what's the
bring-
process?
As far as I understand, if we're changing job descriptions, they do need to be voted upon officially, which does mean that we can't post positions next week. We have to wait until the next board meeting.
Well, but that's why
So
we're gonna have
this
a
is-
special meeting.
I
Maybe.
mean, so I think that there's a question, when are we posting these positions? I think the sooner the better. For everybody who hasn't seen, there's like, on Sunday, there was the article about how many principals in the Upper Valley they're looking for principals. So it's urgent that we are looking and posting as soon as we possibly can. Especially because we're looking for 2 administrators, so I think, and we are interested in a full-time permanent rather than an interim. If we take our time too long, we're gonna end up having an interim, and that is not in the best interest of the school, the teachers, the students, anybody, I don't think. It's my belief. But
Would you recommend at all, or what are your thoughts about, if we post the job, what's the granularity of the job description at the posting, when it's posted? How detailed does it need to be at this time?
Well, superintendent's job description can attach just the head for this. I mean, I don't know what we're saying. What you do is sort of in addition to, but it doesn't mean, if you want your own flair to it. I mean, I've seen some districts that don't have a separate job description for superintendent, because it's identified in the ed rules.
If they're over their trees, then.
In terms of our principal, I don't know. That's pretty driven too. I think you could post without having your final job description, but if somebody's interested, they want to know if you want something in particular.
So the one question I do have, right?
I
is
don't know,
that-
I'm just going on what's on the books, and if it's not good, then you
But
should.
you got these out of our folder, like you got these from,
That's from Elise.
I understand, but these were at some point board approved.
No,
No, I don't know where
that's,
this came from.
that
Okay.
is, no,
These are
no.
ones you created.
Yes, that I
Oh, okay.
shared.
I put in principal job description, the current one.
When there were
So
conversations
this one is
about,
not that one.
The one on the Google Docs is from 2015.
Right, that's what's currently on books.
can I clarify so people don't think I went renegade on job description? When there was conversation about the district structure and how the responsibilities would look different between a DA structure with an academic director and a superintendent, principal, and academic director, I sat down with Tom Harkins and said, can we just take a look at this and how this would be different, you know, within our school and with the SAU office? And so we made 2 drafts and broke out the responsibilities of how they would shift around a bit. And so now, so we had 2 versions, and this was the version with the principal superintendent role, where we saw all of the needs of the school and where they would fit in.
Do you see anything on this list of principal duties that would be unusual?
No,
So I don't think the job description then needs to have a lot of granularity, unless we're gonna ask for a principal to do something other than what somebody applying for a principal position would be expected to do. We can figure this out. Post the position in a generic way, people will apply, and we will figure out what we want, and then as we start interviewing people, we'll know what we're looking for.
Yeah, I don't think it's gonna affect it really, because you've got the ed rules, and really a principal is a jack of all trades, they have to do that.
I mean, and this is, we have.
And then whatever's specific to the school certainly is gonna be, you know, expected.
When you developed this, did you reference the 2015 document at all?
I mean, this is if you read this, compare it side by side, these are general,
Yeah.
these are general categories of what a principal does. The one that I worked was what that would look like in the school.
I see.
So isn't it general? I mean, like, yeah, and you can correct me if I'm wrong on this, but the hiring process is where we select someone that fits the school and the team the best. I mean, for posting the position, and there's a lot of school districts out there that need a superintendent or a principal. This isn't, we're not like the first one in the nation, right? So posting fairly generic seems logical to me, and then during the interviewing process is when we pick the right.
Yeah, that's what, if I was
Yeah.
posting a position for somebody working on my team, I would not make it highly specific unless there was some really specific critical like qualification that person absolutely had to be hired, right? Because the less generic the less generic that job description is, like, you're gonna limit the people who apply, right?
Yeah.
So does this need to come back to the board? Because what I'm seeing is Elise and the LEA Tom Harkins have done this work. Right? We've already got what we already have from the past. Couldn't this be just we trust them to look at this and modify the pronouns and just make sure there's nothing in that list that isn't, I
Yeah,
don't know, like,
All right, so here's a thought too, like, Corinne, could you take this, cross-reference it with what we had and what the regulations are, make sure there's nothing missing, right? Nothing standing out, and then have a product.
Yeah.
For the personnel
Yeah.
committee to look at, or even the full board, if we come together for the
yeah,
personnel.
and
committee.
add what's not in the others, so that.
Right,
you see
so it's
it.
comprehensive
Yeah.
and even specific.
Yeah, this is, I don't know if this has specific
Well, I mean, it's sort of like Elise said, sort of specific to.
to the
Lyme School.
district.
Yeah.
Might have it.
so then we would vote tonight on the motion that's before us about,
We don't have a motion right now.
Yeah, we already voted.
sorry, that
It's
was
just a
voted,
timeline.
sorry. We would have to,
Information
sorry,
on the
we would have to vote again, though, about the positions themselves at our next meeting.
About the
Correct?
job descriptions.
Is that correct or not?
don't
That's
think
what I wanted to
so.
clarify.
The first was to schedule with Tony in the next week, so we have a work session, so you know how you should proceed and what you're looking for. You need to have that conversation, and then we should advertise. We should, you know.
We're going to advertise tomorrow before talking with Tony.
What's on your schedule tomorrow?
Right, as soon as possible.
So do we need to follow this? Do we need to use Primex? You've agreed to use Primex for both the principal and the superintendent search?
You don't need to use
I
private
don't
for
really need
anything.
to. Is there? do you have
I don't know, I've
anything
seen
else?
schools hire their principal without
Yeah, you don't. yeah,
Primex.
It's free. It's a
I mean,
free
I think it's
service.
just a resource because
You don't need to use anything.
Well,
You
that's
can
what I'm
do your
saying,
own.
like, I don't
Yeah.
think we should I
It's
think
a
it would
learning.
be interesting and informative, but it shouldn't necessarily hold up a process.
correct.
And we have we have a process for hiring teachers. Can that not apply mostly for, I mean, I could imagine there's like some tweaks to it, but.
I think importantly is who comprises the committee, right? Those are details that should be discussed at some point.
And then also like another important thing would be to ascertain that, you know, the interview process for the candidates that you select is balanced. The same committee, like the same members, you know, the same questions need to be asked. There's going to be some organic nature to the interview, but fundamentally the process needs to be the same for everyone.
Well, I think that that's where this timeline shows that, you know, in, when you have that first round of interviews, you pretty much are trying to do it in 1 week. So that you have everybody and you have a set number of questions and those questions are asked of everybody, which is our process as well in our hiring process. But so everybody has the same opportunity to answer the questions and it is like a power week, right? And then the following week, we would either do final interviews with the entire board or kind of proceed in that way. And I think that that's still up for discussion if we want to do the entire board, if we want to do it in public. I don't think we can in public.
No, we
actually,
can't do
because
it in public.
we can't do individuals, we can't reveal names, but yeah, so. So is there anybody that's looking at the old job description, I actually think it may be even more, there's even more in here than what Elise and Tom worked on.
The one that's online.
The one that's on the books. Yeah,
Oh,
well, I only have the principal one, I don't have the super one.
Well, so that's
came
why
in
I'm
two
thinking,
files.
like, I don't think we
It's
can
okay.
do like a
Do we
working
need to-
session though now, but what if Corinne would be willing to do that for us?
she has time.
But we talked about the, looking
Well,
at the two.
I can do the
different
cross-reference.
The
Oh, yeah.
cross-reference.
Yeah, I'll take the current
Yeah.
principal one that's adopted by the board, take this, put this into it. If it doesn't already have it,
Right,
and I'll make sure that's noted. But I haven't seen this, but there's probably no reason why this stuff is not already in it or can be added to it.
So
I mean, I don't know.
Corinne, have you spoken with the admin team about that, the committee that will?
Not at all. We have not gotten to that point.
And didn't you say Primex has a recommendation for who makes up the committee?
They do have some, they suggest anything, but you really can have who you want. They suggest 5 to 7 people. They suggest having a community member, maybe a parent, you know, definitely a teacher rep, an admin. You know, they do make those guidelines, but they don't tell you what you have to do. I mean, they're trying to provide best practices because it eliminates, you know, opportunity for bias or, you know, they want the board to have that discussion on what are you looking for? What qualifications are you looking? What would you like to see in your next superintendent, for example, or your next president? You know, what's important to you? It's having that discussion, so that's open to you. And if you don't want to do it, it's not a have to.
Well, I think that gets back to what Elizabeth said at the beginning of the evening. Should be clear on that, yeah.
I think that's something we should probably decide while we're all together.
well, maybe that could be, we could do that as homework, is what we're looking for in the 2 job descriptions, and also ask the LEA to bring us that information as well as the administration. So that we have all of those pieces, kind of like what we did on the retreat, where you're writing all over the board. So that we can come up with concise, these are the characteristics we're interested in for this person and the tasks, the types of people that we want. Because they be all over the place. They may be all be the same, and we'll be happily surprised that we're all on the same page, and that'll make life easier.
So wouldn't you think, I'm just thinking out loud, that somebody who's on the committee that's representing the teachers would have the teachers' sort of interests, best interests in mind, whether it's the
I would
LEA.
think
the
so,
leader,
yeah, I
and
mean,
then-
that's.
But
you
I
want them
think
to
the
represent
LEA,
that.
because, I mean, the LEA is not a small group of people either, so they might have diverse opinions too. The lower school is different than the middle school, so.
Can I follow up with what Hayes was saying? I mean, Hayes has been on a couple hiring committees with us, and I think we have a process in place that can be easily transferred to hiring a principal. And when we get to the committee level, I think we should put trust in the representative group of the committee. So it's unwieldy to keep meeting as a whole board to go, what are we looking for? What are we looking for? If we have a committee that we have trusted individuals, we have a process. We come up with the questions, we vet them with each other. We know what we're looking for. It's all very transparent among the committee, and then we're all set to go. So I think to, make this go more smoothly, we have a process in place, and I think we could apply this at least to the principal search, and you can concentrate on the superintendent search, but trust in the committees and go from there. I think we waste a lot of time. I think we know what we're looking for in principal. We can articulate that, especially through the questions that the committee would come up with for an interview.
Is that all right with everybody?
Can I just add a comment to that? I think also having a board approved job description could be cumbersome because, like Vince said, you get somebody in with certain strengths and you might decide, okay, so the principal's not gonna do the student support team because this person would be better to do it amongst these people, for example. So I don't want to get too fixed on the specifics of the job description. And I think, we started this conversation today, and all this work that Elise and Tom did was kind of chastised, like, why did you move forward doing this work?
Well, what do you mean chastise?
Never
So-
chastised it.
No, not the board, that we should probably save that for later.
Okay, well, let's just.
So, okay, so there's a few things out there. With regards to job descriptions, there's two opinions out there. One is that we should go more vague and more general, so that we are we can pick and choose as people come in to interview, we can find the right person for what we need. There's also the idea of mixing and these two job descriptions, which is the old one and what Tom and Elise have come up with, which I think would probably be a little bit more specific. Is there, I guess, let's start with that. That would be the first thing to decide. Do we want to just go forward with the older job description that is on the books? It's more broad. And we can fix the he, she's and just post it sooner rather than later. Or do we want to take the time to have the mixed? What are your opinions?
I mean, the only opinion I have about the job description, I suppose, is that, like, if we're a relatively high paying district, we've budgeted, I think, more than reasonable amount of money for this position. Somebody with experience, those types of pieces of information. If we're not going to, for example, hire somebody who's straight out of UBEI and has never served as a principal, let's make that clear from the start.
So this conversation,
But
I
the
feel like,
description of the
can this
job
move,
generic.
can this conversation or not? I mean, this is an honest question, and I'm not saying I think this is important, but when you're building the committee and there is a board rep on the committee, and I'm, wouldn't that board rep bring that to the committee level? So we're not getting bogged down here.
Well, I think maybe the point in that is when you post a position, you might say experience required or experience highly preferred.
Or 10+ years. whatever.
Yeah, and
But,
so
but
those are
again,
like
could
some-
that not be a like,
that's
are we
okay.
having a granular,
Experience
my
for
point is, are we having a granular conversation now when we could just say a board member needs to be on this committee and that,
Okay, so we're doing two different things. We're having two conversations.
sorry.
First, job description. Do we go with the prior board approved one? Or do we mix the two, take the time to mix the two?
I don't think we have any time.
Elizabeth?
I have a hard time going with a dated job description that got nixed when we changed structure. So I think we've got to come back to what we want going forward in today. And there may be tremendous crossover, but like, I feel like we pulled something out of the dustbin that.
So you're looking for something more detailed?
No,
rather
I'm
than-
No,
not
she's
looking-
just
I'm looking
saying
for it
update
to
it.
be updated and relevant to today and going forward. And, you know, if Elise and Tom have come up with a construct that, you know, they're in the school every day, I think we owe it to understand this. I haven't looked at any of this in detail, so I'm not.
Yeah, we're.
But
Well, why don't we go
to
with
me,
this then?
You know,
Because this
when we
seems,
update
this
a
seems
policy,
fine too, right? Like,
I had a lot of
This actually
questions,
has
but
less
you know,
than
this is from 2015. It's been dead.
no,
I
I'm
think
giving,
it's
I'm
we
talking,
need to
I'm
Elise.
talking to one
Oh,
that
this one,
Alicia's
yeah,
distributed. I
no,
mean,
I think that's great. but I'm
like the
just
point
saying-
is, Elizabeth, is that if you really want to vote, like a vote in all of these lines, I think
No,
you're
I
going a little
don't.
too far as a
I'm
board
not
member.
asking to vote on anything. I'm just saying I'm not willing to go with something pulled out of a dustbin. I mean, when we update a policy, we don't go back to an old policy to take
Did
the.
not Corinne offer
Step
though to
forward.
do just
Right,
what
but
we're
you
talking
start with
about?
the old
Exactly.
policy.
And
Yeah,
then
Right,
we
put
put
it out
it
there
what
because it's gonna
Corinne
take
is
more time.
recommending to do.
Right.
This is what we have
I
to start,
agree that
let's
it
start
needs
there.
to be reviewed. I just didn't want to go out with the old one. I wasn't comfortable with that.
So can we maybe change the conversation slightly and talk about like, would we be willing to post the position without a detailed job description
Yes.
at this moment? Post it generally, post it with whatever we think we might want as a community. Talk about years of experience or level of experience, or whatever else might need to be on that initial grab, you know? Then this can happen in the next week with collating the job
Right,
description.
it's really in the interview process that you can refer to the job description.
Yeah,
Exactly.
we need it now.
Right.
And we can look at if we have these very specific, well, some quick readers in terms of what's out there on the posting, then, and we'll also be able to know when resumes start coming in, immediately make different piles with what we already know would fit or not fit with our school. And so they can happen simultaneously.
When we do a hire for a teacher, who does the ad?
I'll say
I write it and Janet posts it.
And how specific is this?
Is it?
Vague. It's
very-
teacher,
it's
classroom
It
teacher.
has to be super specific.
So the job description is not posted with the app.
no.
No, so
Okay.
we can, so
Yeah.
couldn't we draft an ad for a principal?
Yeah, that's
And
fine.
just like, you know, and, yeah, I mean, because some of it's.
I was under the impression
written,
that the job description was posted with the ad. So
No,
it's not, then yeah.
No, so
Then we do have the time.
Yeah, we can totally go through and just put the ad out there.
And so
And
maybe,
the ad would sit 3 to 4 weeks out there, so
And may I
you'd
ask
have
a
time to
question?
revise whatever you want to revise.
right,
Which-
and so I guess. my
Which relates to the tech position that we'll talk about, so I want us to remember this, so.
Right.
So, maybe if we could come up with these criteria that we feel like should be put out there for the posting.
Well, you're gonna have some basics. I mean, if you want that, I mean, it's minimum New Hampshire certified, right, as a principal.
So I guess if we were to look at the posting right now, would that be helpful?
Yeah, there's plenty out there. I mean, a minimum number of years' experience. Do you want 3? Do you want 5? I mean, I've seen
10.
5 is the most.
I threw out 10 earlier. I thought more
I mean,
experience is
we
better
need,
if possible.
I know, but we're gonna significantly limit our applicant pool and you
Yeah,
don't
you
want
are.
to, you don't want to do that. You don't want
You find the
to.
right person that's
Principal
got 6 years.
Yeah. Just say.
with certification.
How do we feel about 5?
wanted.
Well, I mean, you know.
I
don't
think
know,
that's what,
maybe
you don't
people
put years.
see what
just say
comes in.
Experienced principal.
What was that last, what was the comment? What principal?
Experienced principal with certification.
Yeah.
I think that's fine,
Yeah.
because most people that make it to principal level have spent significant time in the educational system. So it would open up.
And they've been experienced
Yeah.
for X number
I
of
agree with
years.
that.
And that
But
would
it needs
be-
to say New Hampshire certified, yes? Or
Sure,
can we not? Do we not need to, could someone coming from another state get certified, or is that a danger at this
Well,
point?
they should
Yeah, you
get
can.
certified through a reciprocal.
At least do you feel like you could write an ad
Yeah.
right now?
Yeah.
Okay.
So I
So
think
can-
we should let it go. Elise, if you can write an ad, and the three of you can look at it and agree to it and get the thing posted.
I have a question that I think probably would be a good discussion item, is where are you gonna post it? So are you gonna post it outside the state? Are you gonna post it inside the state? Are you only gonna use School Spring? I mean, the things that we have available to us are like, what, how
What's
broad
the
a
catchy
range
base when
do
you want to advertise?
you want to go out to?
I think it should be broad.
Well, how broad?
I
And so what are
second
the
broad.
options that we currently have?
So right now, we just have our local listservs, and then we have School Spring, which is national, but people have to search by state. I guess you're gonna search by state.
I think it's
We
broad.
also
I
have
mean, our last hire was
Indeed.
not local.
Uh-huh.
So Indeed
What is
is
it,
national.
Indeed.
Yeah, but the problem with Indeed is you get a lot of wacky stuff.
Do you have a
So,
recommendation?
I mean, I think it can be a tool, and maybe using that tool, you would be more specific on what is required as far as the person actually submitting information instead of just taking 500 applications. You know what I mean? What kind of information? So that might be a good tool, but I just wasn't sure if you wanted to post in a neighboring state or.
So if we did want to open it up broadly, what are
Would you do it
our
with
other
the
options?
School Boards Association, because they post, right?
Shouldn't the
Ed
committee
jobs.
be figuring all this out?
Ed jobs is the
So your
superintendent's
first
step.
thing is a
jobs,
published
yeah.
ad. So the first docket item is an ad, and so how far out you wanna go is the first question.
Is there anything else we need to consider just to make sure this process happens? Like, we don't want to have to come back to have another meeting about making sure the job gets posted. What else needs to be known now?
Well, I think and finish the thing. We'll continue to finish answering the question Janet just asked, right?
So she
How
said where
far?
to post, so we said broad, so School Spring, School Board Association, Ed Jobs.
But I think that if we might have to give authorization to post even, are there any other options? So I guess,
Newspapers.
is that?
You do your
give
local
the-
newspapers?
the blanket?
We do, but it's very expensive.
Expensive.
I don't think it's worth it.
It's not
Yeah.
worth it.
Primex doesn't recommend them.
No, that I'm aware of. I didn't ask that question.
So local, School Spring, Indeed, Ed Jobs, NHSBA.
Or just National School Board Association? Is that what?
I don't know if they do their postings for free. We certainly could ask that.
Is everybody okay with all of those? Any
Are there any other options that would broaden the search?
I'll see if I can, I'll see if I can figure something out. I'll look around and
The
then,
Hampshire School Principals Association maybe has a listserv.
And can we do both the superintendent and the principal, or we're starting with the principal as the full-time one, and maybe a part-time superintendent and just leaving it as part-time? Would that be helpful?
Part-time
And
superintendent.
then we can fine tune.
Other questions to just clarify is how long are we waiting, keeping it posted before we contact
Deadline.
anyone?
Yeah.
Are we allowed to see the resumes as they come in? Can we, start right away getting people scheduled? Because we've run into questions in the past that all of the resumes have to come in. It has to
in
be.
order to, right, in order to keep it a clean, ethical search, that has been the process that we've done. We've held all applications until a certain date. And then the committee or whoever it is gets the applications all at the same time, so that everybody has a level playing field. And if you're doing piecemeal coming in and you're doing interviews piecemeal at a time, then the playing field does not remain level and you have bias in the search. So those are the practices that are in place in order so that the searches are clean and there is no bias.
And so in the posting, do you say the date?
Because you've met candidates early in the process and you've started interviews when not all candidates have come in. And this is probably something that Primex will go over with you in order to keep it a
I'm not
level.
saying interviews, I mean, you can't review the materials that come in?
No, because you're actually comparing them and going through them and sculling them.
Okay.
as
But you
a-
have, you
as a
have to
group.
do that, right? You have to do that. And sometimes with the committee, this has bogged us down before in teacher searches. Sometimes the committee, it's hard to get everybody together and get through this process. So if we have everybody and they're available now, we have a couple applicants in, let's look at them. And like, can we communicate and schedule? And knowing like the job is still posted and we're gonna take, some applicants. So I understand what Janet's saying. I know that we want to work for more expediency, so I just want to clarify that. Well, I can go with what you suggest, but let's clear that up.
Maybe we can give a timeline and say, first round, we will start looking at reviewing applications on a certain day. So if we were to say
But it means
posting
more
on
could
February
still
We'll
come
also
in.
have a deadline.
preliminary.
Yeah, but
review.
We'll
typically
accept
we'll start
applications
something,
until a
right?
certain date.
Do you, when you do, like, I've worked for the government and then also public universities, and typically when those institutions or entities have posted a job, there's a filing, there's like a date, this posting will
Yes.
close on X date.
Right.
And I don't know if that means, for example, that people can't review the resumes that come in, but no interviews are gonna be scheduled until
Right.
after that date.
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
at least then it gives the applicant that window of time where they know, well, I haven't been called yet, but that's not necessarily like a bad thing.
Right.
But it
And it-
helps if we can review it.
Yeah, I'm not
Because-
sure I see a
yeah,
problem
I
with
don't see a problem
reviewing
with it. I
resumes
agree
as they
about
come in,
you.
because I
just
wouldn't wanna
wondering-
have to read through
Right.
35 resumes in 5 days.
Exactly.
That actually feels more
It is
potentially like
It's really
biasing.
I
You're not
get it.
gonna give
It's
everything
really
fair
hard,
share.
But in order to stop resumes from being out there all over the place, right? That's
Yes.
also another issue,
Can't cause
is having resumes
on.
on people's desks and not having a chance to look. It's all of those pieces. So, and whatever you guys decide, that is what it is. But we have a procedure that we followed for years. And we follow the same, I mean, it is on paper, it's something that's been at the SAU office, and it's a guideline that we followed for years. So,
I would like to say that if we should review the resumes for teacher candidates and as they come in, but not interview until after the date closes for when they're posting. It makes it
Yeah.
easier on all of us that
I
are
agree
part of
with
this process.
Are the names, are there those equity practices of blacking out the names and anything that would identify gender, just to help with equity issues in hiring? I know we have an equity committee now at the school, and I was wondering if that's something that we're gonna move to, because I didn't see that as part of the process prior, so I was just wondering.
It has not been
Never
part of
done
the
that.
process of hiring to do that. I mean, one
It's a
suggestion.
recommended practice to
Yeah, we always
improve
do that.
equity.
Yeah, I'm not saying it isn't a good idea. And one other thought would be if the board approved the idea of reviewing resumes before the end date, to only do it at SAU office, and that no copies would be made and it would all just take place there. I think at least, so that it doesn't, they don't get accidentally disseminated.
Yeah, which I think is a good idea, particularly with the understanding that it's possible that we may get local people who already have jobs applying for the job.
Yeah.
And you don't want somebody's name to get out there, even though nobody meant to cause any harm.
So then are we eliminating having a smaller group doing a preliminary review of applications and just having the committee come in and
I
It's just
yeah,
the
I think they're still
committee.
doing
It's
their
just the
process.
committee.
I feel real strongly about that, yeah. I do
Right.
anyway.
About which aspect?
That I think the committee should see them all, not. have
So
them
not
be
having
crazy.
like a couple of people go in earlier and just pair out kind of the obvious.
Because then that would be a subcommittee and do it
Yeah,
that
no.
way, right?
I got 100
I'm fine with
applications,
that.
want some screening,
Just
but I don't,
clarifying.
you're not gonna get that.
Well, but I'm concerned that what Janet is saying about Indeed, that we're gonna get all kinds of
Yeah,
crazy stuff. I don't know, but that seems like a headache, right? Is there a way, but did you mention some way to screen out some of them?
Yeah, so you do have the ability to ask for a resume to be posted, et cetera, et cetera. But I can tell you that when we did the food service search, I had 130 applications through Indeed. And only 5 of them were really viable. And only 2 of them did we do interviews, but there was a lot of draw, and they were from all over the United States. of America.
So we could skip Indeed maybe.
But that's one of the only like national, like broad options that we've heard of.
I don't know, I find the same. I don't know, we don't use Indeed, but I can tell you, I'm sensitive to Janet's like, whoa, here. Because you just get people like, you're like, you have
Just pop their
absolutely
name.
no qualification associated with this position.
Mhm.
Like, like people who've like, just have no like literally
Oh,
no
yeah.
qualification. And you do get those people. You get a lot of people from other countries too. So it gets pretty broad. I don't know if that'll happen with this position, but it does create work for somebody to just go through, and that wouldn't necessarily have to be the committee. That could be a person that just being like, okay, well, this is crazy, and this person.
Right.
I mean, that's up for discussion. We can have a couple people go in and clearly
You can
get rid of
filter- you
outliers
can
if you
filter
want.
this stuff.
It's up to
You
you.
can narrow it. There was a question that came up, when will, this is from Tom, when will these be posted, these positions?
I think the idea is to do it. as
That's
soon
what I
as
was gonna ask,
possible.
so where are we?
Right, so where are we in that process? I guess the question, so.
What do you wanna do?
How can we turn around? the-
Well, I think, I thought Elise was gonna draft an ad, right? And then the 4 of you can review it and agree upon it.
The ad.
Yeah, and then get it posted.
But the question will be when, since this is a timeline
Oh, it's
discussion.
timeline
Right,
discussion.
Is it open until filled? Is there an end date if we don't get enough applicants?
Well, we aren't
Are
allowed
gonna
to say
reopen
open to
that?
fill, right? Because
I
we
think we-
can't then look at it.
I think we say February 25,
So
well, that's the superintendent, sorry.
you can say
And-
open to,
February 28th, maybe for the principal, because that's on this sheet, so I like those dates. That's about a month.
but I think you can say open until filled, and then in that job also say preliminary review of applicants will be on this.
We'll start
So-
on such and such. a date.
Here's
Right?
one,
Can we
that-
do that?
here's one from the Rye School District. Application deadline, the date posted, the starting date for the job. A brief job description just saying school district searching for a dynamic educational leader to succeed. The current principal is retiring, blah, blah, blah. The ideal candidate must possess certification as a principal in the New Hampshire Department of Education. Preferred candidates must have 7 to 10 years of professional experience, which include teaching and educational leadership comparable to the responsibilities of the principalship. They're going broad, which I wanted to suggest to you, so you think about that. But, and then for a complete job description, to view the principal search timeline and to visit the website, our school's website. So then you can have something attached there. They do list then some other job requirements down below, but we don't have to.
That sounds good.
Okay, so the deadline, February 28th, sounds good?
Well, I didn't dislike your suggestion, the until filled.
I mean, I think that if you were to post it until filled and say though, that resumes will be preliminary review on this and this day. That
people
allows
know to get
people
it
to
in
know that
before
that's
then.
kind of the first wave is gonna come in and you, after that day, that's when we're gonna start reviewing, reviewing resumes. But that way you don't have to close it and then reopen it and. Got it, right?
As long as we can look at the candidates, because we had this experience where we weren't sure if we needed to
To keep the job post, like extend the posting.
Because we didn't know. if
We
had
didn't- yeah.
viable candidates because we couldn't.
We couldn't see what was there yet.
Well, yeah, so,
But don't you just keep it perpetually open until you've made an offer, or no?
Well,
Typically, they have a deadline. Applications will be accepted until a specific time on a specific
But I
day.
think we're
because then that
agreeing that
gives
you can
closure to the
review
person.
the applications as they come in, we just don't interview until.
But we do have a deadline for applications, February 28th is what
So
Jen
what
suggested.
happens
Is that okay?
okay, so then we could do a February.
Yeah, but I
28th
see
too.
what Yoel is saying. I think what we can do is say like what Rye did, which is direct somebody who's that curious about what our timeline is to the website. And we say, you know, we're going to start interviewing or, you know, on March 1st, right? But the position's open until it's filled. So that way, if somebody comes along on March 3rd and they just haven't seen the position, they'll apply. And if we haven't got a viable candidate, then we'll still receive those applications. But hopefully, we'll have viable candidates and we'll just be moving forward. But at least giving that date of whether it's March 1st or February 28th, like gives the people who've applied some understanding. There are many positions for principals open in New Hampshire, so you don't, you know, you can't leave people completely open-ended, I think.
Do you guys like this timeline, February 28th and week of March 7th? That gives the committee a week to go in and review all of the resumes, and then the week of 7th, and decide on interview, who to interview, I guess, during that first week of March. The second week of March, interviews are scheduled for the first round of interviews.
Maybe
Is
I
that-
wonder
does
if
that
we
work?
should do it like a week earlier, like February 20, whatever.
There's
minus 7 is
vacation.
21.
That
Right,
is vacation.
So
oh,
the argument is
I
also
see, so
that
then I guess just leave it, because we can't do it earlier than that,
part of
so.
it was, I think the recommendation is to leave it open for a month. before you
No.
Really,
But all these other districts are ahead of us. Just gonna say that out loud.
But it sounds like this could get posted by, it's sounding like
maybe.
Friday. Am I wrong?
Okay.
It is, yeah, it is 8:57.
So are we good on posting?
Yes,
Both positions?
yes,
We'll post as soon as possible after the generic description.
Administration
has
has
been
created that.
created. And then as soon as you're able to do
Say
it.
that again? What's created?
as soon as
Yes.
The generic.
Okay,
ad.
yes,
Yeah,
Louise was gonna do the
yeah.
ad for the principal,
Yeah.
and you want us to do the ad
For the
For the
for the
superintendent.
superintendent,
Or
and you
generic
want
one.
us to get them out
yes.
at the
And in the
same time.
meantime, we'll mesh the two.
Right,
to
yeah,
find
right,
out.
right, okay.
I think though, we need to answer the question about experience level.
I think we just do, like, we say an experienced
Experience,
educator. We could
Experience.
say something like a highly qualified candidate would have 10 years of experience. But, you know, but leave the verbiage such that we're open, like, don't not apply if you've only got 5.
I think we should be, we
Just say
should,
experience.
right, experience in
Yeah.
educational leadership.
Yeah.
I think we can't close it, we can't narrow it right now.
Yeah, yeah,
And by
Yeah,
narrow,
and just see who applies.
you mean principal, you don't think years of experience as a principal, that would be narrowing it?
I
Is
think
that
it
your
would be,
thought?
because what if you have someone who's been teaching principals for a while and is a very experienced educator and knows everything about school leadership, but maybe, you know, hasn't had that principal position, but, you know, interviews fantastically and has all the people skills we're looking for, why would we not want someone like that?
I don't think you want to limit the number of people who apply, right? Like, you don't want to be
You might get
too.
people out of the private system too that would come public.
Right.
I'm just.
All right,
I can have this done and we can post on Thursday.
awesome, great.
Perfect.
Great, thank you.
Yola?
Well, so,
Yola,
yes,
can we, like, we amend, it's 9:00, what, I think we're gonna.
I was
need
just
another meeting.
suggesting an
so
amendment.
we will, and then, yes, we will skip all of the policies for today and we'll set another meeting up. I do want to go through, board docs progress, it's going to take 2 minutes. Do you want to do it?
It's still happening. I mean, we're not ready to train
Progressing.
you yet. It's progressing.
Perfect.
Good answer.
All right. Elizabeth, school budget.
Okay, I'll try to be quick and I apologize. The upshot is that we got a unanimous approval of our budget from the budget committee when we met with them. Just a reminder, year over year, our increase was 3.26 for a budget of 7,874,145. We also made our longstanding goal of CPI +1 for managing controllable costs, and controllable costs means you pull out high school and special ed. Our controllable budget came in at 6.74% and CPI +1 goal was 6.9. High school, I don't know, I put the summary up on the sheet, because we've gone, those are the only items that weren't in the last budget discussion. Basically, we are have an overfunded trust in high school. So we're underfunding the high school by 10 students, drawing down approximately 164,000. SPED, the main increase due to costs were services for students within high school and an 80,000 out of district placement. We chose in this budget to do half of that out of district placement cost because there's a question whether we'll need the full tuition or not. And if we do, we can use the SPED trust for that. You'll see that the SAU administrative line is up substantially. That's the part-time superintendent. And you'll see that the school administration line is slightly down because we have a principal salary versus a DA. Paid instruction, the budget was up 4.51, which was mainly salary costs and the 0.4 language teacher for the middle school due to the middle school class sizes. We did not pull out an enrollment slot because there's an anticipated split for first grade due to the class size and sort of the makeup of the class. So it didn't require a year-over-year increase in FTE, but we didn't get to take that position, that enrollment position out. Healthcare was up 5+%. Salaries on average were up 4.7, and the retirement contributions remain high at 14.06. Buildings and grounds, the sector, the budget is up 4.4% outside the warrant article. This is mainly due to trash removal increases, fuel costs, and more realistic general maintenance allocation. And food service is seeing a huge jump. This is around the contracted services in the current construct of the food service plan. The warrant article was also unanimously approved. There's a $70,000 warrant article for a number of projects that need attention due to deferred maintenance over a number of years and some leftover work from a pipe break last year and safety and compliance issues. So that is it. In a nutshell, that was pretty fast.
That was great.
Are there any questions? Because I'm not trying to skip over it. I just recognize that we've gone through a lot of it before we presented to the budget committee. And Jen, also, I think you've seen a line that's really great data on sort of
talk about that some other time.
right. I know. I'm saying
Tonight's not
you should
happening.
really go and look at those spreadsheets. There's a lot of good data that I think, when we get back together for another work session and we start to prepare for the district meeting in March, that we can incorporate a lot of that to be able to tell the story of the school in a more robust fashion. So other than that, I guess.
I think in terms, I don't have a question, just a comment, which is the reference to the budget being 3 point, I think if here it says 3.26%, I thought it was 3.06, but nevertheless.
No, it is 3.26.
I think that we need to describe this as a budget that's a 5.4% increase, and we're offsetting we're offsetting, I don't want to call it the burden, but just for lack of a better word right now, we're offsetting the burden of taxpayers in this year by drawing
Yep.
160, by planning to draw $165,000 from the trust, because we're underfunding high school by 10 students. Not with,
That's
you
fine.
know,
So just as an overview, I just want to add something to that. So the 10 students that you're underfunding is equivalent to more money than 165,000.
Yeah, let's go.
I had the same question. Okay,
So-
tell me about why we're only drawing 165 then.
So you're only drawing 165 because you're looking at it from budget to budget. So you're looking at it from this year's budget to next year's budget, which is not equivalent. And this year's budget has not real basis in the number of students that we actually have this year, because it was a level funded number from the year before.
Because they
So-
were trying to spend on
Yes.
the trust too.
Right, which I totally get, but I'm just saying that overall, in the finance committee, you talked about doing the, high school drawdown, so you did say 10 students, which in reality comes to about $200,000. But it really will depend on the actuals of the year, like when you're looking at this year, and we're talking as we go through, we have 99,000 that we're gonna draw, even though 240,000 was projected to draw. So I just wanted to mention that. Yeah, but the budget to budget difference is the 165,000.
That makes like almost no sense to me. I'm so sorry that I'm not following. So 10 students, right? Because we
Yeah.
went to Hanover to talk about what they cost, like you're taking that as a baseline, right? Like, you
So they
know,
average out, so we do this spreadsheet every year.
It's based on the number of
It's
students.
based
that
on
are
number of
going.
students and the actual enrollments
Yeah.
by
Yeah.
school. And then we have the tuition amounts, and they vary.
Yeah.
And then we do sort of a 2% increase without having actual numbers yet. So, and then, so we figured that 20,000 for each child, because it's sort of an average, because Rivendell was only 14,000 for tuition, where Hanover is 21. So 20 was an average, and 10 students is equivalent to about $200,000. So that's,
but it says 164 here.
I know, but
It's
that's
because
the
we're
budget to
basing
budget.
it 10 under the count of the students for next
Mm.
year.
Right.
Which reference budget to budget is only
Mhm.
164,000 in the actual budget line.
I see, it's not actually, you're not accounting for, okay.
No.
Right, it is really just for your information, so that
So
you
she
know
wanted you to understand.
I just want you to
why
know
the net
what
number
the real
didn't
number
match 10.
is, and it's not
How much money do we have left in that trust?
630
No,
something.
Almost 640, and it's, the target is 450, and we can even probably argue whether the target should be 450.
I think
My
the
opinion.
target should be 700.
700,000?
No, but hear me out on this, right? So, because like if we think about, you know, and I don't remember, you know, we'll have to go back to Jeff's presentations on that, but he shows sort of the variance year to year. Like sometimes like 20 people would enter high school, and then there was like a class of 11. Right, so if you have like 2 years where like that look like our current 4th grade in a row, and I know we can see it coming, right? We have to account for being 10 students over for 4 years, right? So that's $800,000 already. And so based on the amount of variance, my gut tells me 450 is a low ball number to aim for. We don't have to do that science tonight, but I just,
Yeah, we could talk about it,
I have a,
but yeah, I don't
we
know
had
that.
huge debates on this.
Yeah, I mean, in general, I think the sense of the town is that they don't want to put their money into like a trust
right.
at that level.
Mhm.
And the other
Just
problem
eroded
that I have,
value, it sits there.
Yes.
It's not
it's not
uninvested.
invested, it
We're
sits
trying to
there,
even
it's actually
out the
worth
peaks
less
and
this
valleys,
year than
not
it was
white
last
on
year.
It is 909.
Okay,
there's
so
trustees of the trust fund, and they do
you,
invest your
Sarah.
money. It just doesn't.
I know.
It's
So we
fascinating,
do
but
have
we
to
could talk
have
about
a
this another
vote on
time.
this because we've got all signed
Yeah.
yes, MS.
I would like to move this.
I will
school
second
budget.
it.
Okay.
So
There you
Sarah
go.
further
Moved it.
discussion?
So really what you're voting is the number,
Yes,
right?
yeah,
So you're
7
not
million.
voting 7 million.
874, 145. You don't include the 10 cents.
We don't include the 10 cents, okay.
That's for
So-
Article 2.
And we have to, because we all have to sign the MS.
Right, and I don't have a final, but you have to vote the warrant money articles.
Oh,
Do we need to
individually.
vote all of them individually?
We did them
Money
all
articles.
for the
The money
budget committee, we did them all at once.
We did them all together.
So we
I
can
have to be able
recommend,
to say.
Well,
that
I was just
recommend
moving
that.
the number for
And
the
that's fine.
budget. Do I also need to move the warrants?
And do it separate.
They're separate.
Yeah, you know, you do this first and then you do the warrant.
all right,
I may have
all in
seconded.
favor of.
So we have a
the
second.
number.
Jen seconded it.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I did second the motion to.
No, I just have to speak out because I've spoken with a good number of community members about this number. And.
Which
as-
number? The total
The
number?
total number. And as sort of the liaison and representative for them, I feel like this increase is more than is sustainable for our community, especially with the trajectory that we've seen. So I feel like I can't support this percentage increase this year. I would feel like if you're saying 3.26, I think that from what people I've talked to, they feel 2% would be more reasonable. I don't know how that translates when you change it to 5.4. So I wanted to put that out there as my thoughts. I feel that my vote against this budget will certainly show up at the school budget meeting. And I would be happy to talk about it if it's asked to represent those people who I've talked to and talked with about this. And I feel like they have a fairly good understanding of where we are with relation to what the state government is giving us and how things have changed. But I feel like also we could do more within the school to be efficient. And it's not my job to say how, but I want to put that out there.
I don't disagree with you. I mean, I think the budget is on a trajectory that is not sustainable. And whether it's our fault or it's tax policy's fault, like I can't solve that problem. And we need to be realistic, right, about that trajectory. I mean, the best thing that I thought, I don't know where you would cut like in this particular budget. So I will vote in favor of this budget, but I know that we need to do a new strategic plan starting next year. And that's where I think we need to start having some very serious conversations about how we can, present the educational curriculum that people want in the school, but at the same time improve whether it's efficiency or something, just because we can't keep doing this. Eventually our budget is going to get voted down and we're going to go through what Hopkinton went through, last year, the year before, and it's challenging and stressful, but at some point people are just going to hit their limit.
And I feel like
So,
my vote is what would be a placeholder. I mean, I don't expect that the number will change tonight, but it's a placeholder for the community and our commitment to making change.
I think that Hayes by itself, right? Like, I mean, I emailed all of you, right? Like, I've been in 3 budget cycles, and every budget cycle we say, yeah, we need to do something, and then we don't. And I think that is actually the point you're making right now. I think it's very fair, right? Like, how are we a community representative that says, yeah, we're gonna do something, but we gotta get this budget through, and then we do it anyway. And then nobody ever talks about it again, right? And, Jen, I disagree with the funding structure because it's the budget, right? Where the funds come from is a different story, right? So, we should think about that, right? So I also
Yeah.
don't understand what CPI +1 means, because that means that, take this 50 years forward and like half of the income of the town of Lyme needs to go to the school budget. So at some point, budgets always grow, but they should grow in line with an economic growth, give or take, some additional, quality of education we've been wanting to put in, but we've been putting that in, which is why the budget has grown right that 46% in the last decade, right?
well, that's a good question to ask. I don't know that that's I don't know why the budget has grown, whether if 46% over the past decade. I don't think that it's because our programming has necessarily improved at the school. I think you're looking at healthcare costs,
Mhm.
retirement contributions. There's a lot of, salary increases, the salaries that we pay, which I'm not saying any of that stuff needs to change, right? It's just, I think that that's a good question to say like, well, what is really driving this cost? It's a question that we should be able to answer, but it's not an answer that we're gonna get to, but it's gonna take some time. And we may be better off hiring like a consultant or somebody who actually like does those type of statistical modelings, whatever needs to be done to help us get the correct answer. Because I couldn't do it easily.
Well, no, I'm not holding you personally.
Yeah.
That wasn't the point, but the point is that I do think that, right, that, you are right, like other costs have grown, mandates for costs have grown, but that probably doesn't explain the entire story, right? We've seen a strong FTE growth. Right? Those are all factors that we look at every year and we say, oh boy, it does grow, but we never return to it when the times are not. So anyway, that's just the counterpoint to what the point you were making.
Yeah, I mean, it would be interesting, and I would love to talk to Corinne sometime about what you see, as the differences in our school versus the school that you helped run in Berlin. Like, what did their K-6 school not have that we have? I bet they didn't have a design lab. They may not have even had an art program. Gym, I don't know, they probably weren't too worried about their gym floor. I'm not saying that I think those things should go away. I think we should have those things. And I think that the community standing up for the educational value that the school provides, something that Lyme's always done, and it's the right thing to do. But it is it's a difficult environment because people in our town are being very heavily relied. Their property value is dictating what they have to pay. It doesn't matter that they just retired. It doesn't matter that we hit a recession. It doesn't matter about COVID. Your property value is not going to change, right? So there's no, and then on top of that, there's like no circuit breaker in New Hampshire that's remotely reasonable to assist people whose incomes have fallen, and they just really can't maybe pay that property tax. How many people in Lyme are actually in that situation? I don't know, right? Like we have, and certainly the truth of the matter is that even if tax policy changed, people in Lyme would probably not see, for the most part, their tax burden go down because, it would help, I think, the retired community. It would help certain people, but I would expect that if tax policy changed in New Hampshire, I think I'd probably start paying more. Right. So, so there's just a lot like.
Yeah, but that, like, we should see that as loose, because I do think when we talk strategic plan, right? And I really do want to talk about that because, like, we have added these things, right? Like, I think Design Lab is actually a wonderful, unique feature of the Lyme School. You add that 1 year, then that raises your budget that year by, I don't know, 2% or something, right? After that, like, the costs of that should track roughly with inflation. So CPI +1, I just can't find myself in. Like, that seems like, a long-standing rule. I think the rule is broken, and we need to put that on the table for discussion.
Yeah.
Right?
I mean, I'll
I think it's
honor
the
something
system
that,
that's broken,
yeah.
is what it comes down to. The system is broken. I mean, you can look at the town budget. I mean, we had these same conversations 10 years ago in the post-financial crisis. Do we want to outsource our police force? That was a question that was on the table at the time. People said no, they want local control. Do we want to send the middle school somewhere else, right? Do we want to send all our kids somewhere else? I mean, those are the things you have to look at if you want to make some type of systemic change in this environment. It's got to be pretty radical. And I don't know. I mean, maybe the town's now ready for that conversation. When these things have come up in the past, people have made the decision that we're going to invest in the children in this community, in this school.
All right, on that note, can we vote on the number?
Sure. Yeah, we can vote on the number.
Anything else? So all in favor of the budget to be set at $7,874,145.
Okay.
And all opposed? Ms. Burke and Greenway. All right. Do we need to move all the warrant articles?
We need to move the warrant articles, the money articles to 70, and then there's articles for the treasurer and the.
Can we do it as a slate of
Yes, we
articles?
By the way, did those get all signed? I saw that Phil
There's
had
one
it
more
signed.
bill that's,
Okay.
That's a different warrant.
That's the,
Well,
this
that's-
is the
that's
election.
different.
That's the
All
election.
right, so do I have a motion to
I'll
move
move
the
that.
all the rest of the articles?
I'll move the other money
Moved by
articles.
Glenn Shaw, second by Greenway. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any
Aye.
opposed? Any opposed? No opposed. Excellent.
By the way, that's an opportunity to save some money too, if we can figure something out with the recreation committee, so that shouldn't be forgotten.
Right. All right.
But just a quick question, that would ultimately be just a different source for the funds, so, right?
That's right,
It
and
would
it
still be,
It
yeah.
doesn't have to be town money either, it could be
Oh,
private
Right.
donation.
Sure, be private.
Just bear the cost.
Yeah,
share the cost.
But we should try to get that because we can do a floor amendment to that
Sure.
as well.
It's 9:21.
So do I have a motion to move the on-call substitute for this month?
I'll move that.
Yeah.
Not everybody all at once. Any of.
So
Come on,
You write
take your
anybody
pick,
down.
anybody down. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Excellent. All of them. I'm actually just gonna skip over to the change of calendar and MOU, because that'll be super fast.
Or we hope, I don't
Is that
know.
okay? Any?
Oh, yeah, what is the change?
So what, the change
So-
is just to have early dismissal, right?
The request is because the school would like to have they have scheduled a March conference week. And they did not account for early dismissal on 4 of the 5 days, because right now Thursday they dismiss at 2 already, they wouldn't change that. But they're requesting an amendment for Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Friday to release the students at 1:30. So that helps provide some opportunity of time for conferences. So the question came up, well, can they do that in terms of the number of hours? So I prepared a document for you that shows the minimum number of hours that the state requires and the district has. When they built that calendar, they have lots of extra hours, which is great because you may not, if you have to close for COVID for a day or 2, you may not have to make up those days because you have the hours. But taking those 4 early release days, that week of March, I'm showing you the balance of instructional hours, and you're still within the requirements. So,
do I have a motion to accept the change in the school
I'll move
calendar? Moved by Glenn Shaw, second by Greenway. Any further questions?
Corinne, what do you think of this change?
I find it radical to have to change the calendar at any time during the year, but I mean, I understand why they need it, and I think it has value. So I think it's important that you do support them.
All in favor?
Aye.
Excellent. All right, can we do the MOU quickly too?
Was that
I don't know, if I'm
unanimous?
trying to relieve anybody who's on the call that,
Well, was that unanimous?
that was
Yes.
unanimous, yeah.
The MOU,
The
are
MOU
you there?
for the teaching.
Yes, we have 2 copies of it, and it would be, it's the memorandum of understanding from the LEA to be able to compensate a teacher that loses a planning time if they have to fill in for another class. And I've gone over this, Janet has gone over this, Yola has. If you want me to read it, I certainly can. Do you want that, or did you all have it? I don't know where it's at.
So the idea is that we can afford it because it's probably not gonna happen.
Well, that was my question. That's my one question that I wrote down in preparation. How are we?
Yeah, what is the synopsis of how much we anticipate? Because at some point, if the shortages get too big, we can't operate, right?
Right, there is a plan
Yeah.
that the school has developed that if they reach a certain threshold of staff, that they can't fill and supervise kids, then the school's gonna have to close. This is under the circumstances that a teacher in a regular educational day has at least 1 planning period. And if they're asked to cover and fill in for a teacher who's absent, so you might use 3 teachers to fill in for 1 class just because of when their planning periods are or their availability, and then they lose their own planning time, that needs to be compensated. And so the recommendation is to compensate a staff member that loses a planning time at a rate of $45 for a class period that's 30 to 45 minutes. Or if their planning time is, or their class period is 45 to 75 minutes, it would be compensated $65. So it really is a small token.
Right, for the
And,
fact that they not have to
Yeah,
take their own
because they
time, yeah.
lose.
Yeah, but this is not, I mean, this does not read like something that's gonna be like, we have to do 300 times in a week, right? Like, I mean, this is,
No,
so,
And that's thanks to Elise and team.
yeah.
for really
no,
working
I
hard on this.
don't know if it has happened yet. I kind of track the absence, by the day, but I have no way of knowing
Mhm.
whether there's teachers that have lost planning period at this point, or I don't know that. This agreement is not precedent setting. And it's not going to establish past practice. It's for the current circumstances only. So, I think you should approve it. I think Yola and I should sign it, and then tomorrow Tom will come over to the office to sign his copy, so I have 2 copies of the same.
For the
Need the
motion
board's
to accept the MOU as written,
Yes.
Glass
I'll second.
and Glenshaw, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Excellent, okay. Tech discussion.
Just
Tech
a
staffing.
question. So is this retroactive or is it starting today?
It should be we didn't
Starting
specify,
today.
but it's my understanding it starts from board approval day.
Sign it.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know how you track retro. Active anyway. I know.
That's the only one I've heard that's actually closed.
Because of COVID?
It's, well, that's the substitutes and all that.
Yeah,
Don't have to cover
Rivendell,
it.
Rivendell
That's a
closed.
cook.
But for COVID.
There's a bunch of places
Yeah,
that are
but
lost.
they're
Upper
still
Valley,
there.
Vermont. Yeah.
And their plans for, individual classes, or partial school.
Yeah, I guess the difficulty would probably be the first day, right, where you really had that crunch, because you'd have to stay open, because you might not know by 5:30. So we could maybe do these shifts, but then the next day, is how many
Okay, it's 9:27.
All right, so.
Yeah.
Do you want to-
Then I turn it over to
Yeah,
you.
yeah, okay, so in tech staffing, the job
Oh,
added-
Please.
Yeah, I have a 2-minute statement, and then you definitely have to have a conversation about how you want to go. So I think that everybody agrees that we have technology needs. I think everybody agrees that we have upgrades, we have needs. And integrated use on how schools have to operate. Technology is not something we add on with the specialty. It's how you conduct business. I don't think that, I don't think anybody disagrees. But I want to recap. Number one, I walked into a hornet's nest. On December 14th at the board meeting, I presented a tech job specialist job description under the recommendation of the tech committee. I recommended a salary range 50 to 55 based on the New Hampshire CTO Council salary survey of average salaries for positions in school technology. That salary amount didn't get in that printed document. I brought it up before approval. The board approved the job description with the expressed need to discuss further, which is what I interpreted it and wrote in my notes. I erred in not providing time for the human resource to vet the job description and add the necessary parts to complete the description. And I apologize for that. It just seemed like it was such dire straits to hurry up and move something forward for a particular situation. I suggest the board have a full discussion on how to best meet the technology needs of the district. Come to consensus on moving forward. You've heard a lot about the plan. You've heard a lot about the needs. You know the system. I also recommend that you negate the job description approved on December 14th because I had not followed what I should have followed in communicating with HR. And I feel it's incomplete. It doesn't specify the number of days. It didn't have the salary range printed. It just didn't have enough. So I apologize for that and I open it up for your discussion. Because you need to come to some consensus. There is a need. You've got to figure out how you service it. Do you contract the service out? You add an FTE. I mean, I know there was a plan to drive one particular plan forward, but it just kept spiraling in my mind and I just could not get a clear understanding, honestly, of a non-biased situation. So I apologize for that, but I think you need to decide where you want to go. Because I think you have enough information about what the needs are. I hope you do, because, I mean, they've presented, the tech committee has presented everything, and they're making a lot of big changes which needed to be done. And obviously some that didn't even get into the budget because it wasn't planned. I mean, we've had a lot of changes, and I mean, once I got into the work, I just couldn't get out of it. So I look for your guidance to move forward for the school and for the benefit of the technology development for the school needs.
So Corinne, I remember at the end of that conversation, I thought that it would be posted once we had money to fund the role.
There was that question, yes, that there was no funding at that time. Well, there is no funding
Well,
today either.
That's, I thought was the biggest
Yeah.
concern. How can you hire into a role?
Right.
that can't
That doesn't have funding. Yeah, it was pretty convoluted. I'll
But that's what I
just like
remember
in a
at
tailspin
the
over it.
end of that
Mhm.
vote that was, and it may be even reflected in the minutes. I'm not sure.
It is reflected in the minutes.
Okay, I just opened up the minutes.
I guess I'm still puzzled as to how we got here. I'm incredibly disappointed and sad that Lydia resigned at the beginning of the meeting. My understanding as a board member was that this was set back in the spring and that our tech needs were being met by a full-time para. I don't know. I feel like things have been said at meetings that said, oh, we knew something was coming. I have no idea where that comes from.
Well,
I
want
feel
to
like there
know-
may have been
yeah.
a conversation and something was promised to somebody that was not a board approved thing when the board had approved what was presented to us in May.
Right.
And
When
so I feel
walked
like
in-
we're
yeah.
getting, like, we have targets on our backs.
Yeah.
And I don't
Oh, yeah,
understand what
totally.
happened. And it may not matter, but it does matter in regards to staff morale.
Yeah.
And I'm still bewildered. What happened? Was our tech integration as promised?
We had
A job.
we had a resignation at the last moment, at the end of the school year. So we couldn't, we had not the time to get everything in alignment with all the job descriptions because of the resignation of Laura Beard. So we had a tech assistant, a half-time tech assistant. Jeff said, I will fix this. I will make sure that this becomes at least a full-time tech assistant. And then we really need to get working on how we're going to replace, this tech position. And then he resigned. Didn't follow up in the summer. He said he was getting a number of conversations started with Vince and a few people, and it didn't happen.
See, it's just to Sarah's point,
So
though.
we've talked about this. We've gone over this.
So it
But
was-
Jeff
so this should
never
have been
came, but
budgeted
Jeff
last
came
year,
to
of
this
course.
board
Guys,
to
do we need to
ask.
go into non-public? We're
Yeah,
talking
maybe.
about
Yeah,
individuals.
Sorry.
Well, I'd like you to limit the time, really, because there's other things that have to go on public.
Well, I don't know what
So
we
if we're
do
going to be
now.
speaking about individuals, then we would need to go into non-public. I think we can say things as things were promised, things were spoken. As well, just wanted to caution everybody.
Well, it may not matter if things were promised, because like now we have the situation we have.
Right.
But like, which is rotten.
It is rotten.
Well, I think it's safe to say that as memory serves, that seems to be in alignment, that we had the understanding that there would be an increase in an FTE of a para to fill the role that was being filled this current year. The conversations this year have been more about this role is not being fairly compensated. And that's new to the board, correct?
That's the change.
It's not what was advocated for, and even if, I mean, I even have to say that even if in July, somebody started to advocate for that, we had already passed the budget in May. We can make changes for next year, for the next fiscal year, but we can't do anything about the fact that we right at this moment, we have an extra $5,000 Like, we can't hire somebody to fill a position that we can't pay for. And that
Unless
we
that
don't know
grant
we
comes
can pay
through.
for.
But
That's-
there was a grant that we thought we'd be able to use, right, to raise the pay level.
But we
Want
haven't,
to, well, half of the position, when it turned to a full-time position, half of it was supposed to be grant funded, the grant was never written.
Right.
And we're still waiting on approval just for that 50%.
but that's just
So-
at the para rate.
And,
Oh,
and,
okay.
and that 50% wasn't in the budget.
Right, just
So-
notes were to increase a para from a 0.5 to a 1.0. That's the only notes I have. So that's what got into the grant, but still here we are into January, don't even know.
That's right, because we approved that, move
Correct.
to a 1.0
Correct.
with the understanding that we can find funding for it,
Right.
even though it's not in the budget, right?
So we were
right.
looking for even more money.
Uh,
Okay.
I think the other piece that we have to also think about is we have a bottom line budget. So things get shuffled around all the time. So, you know, we have to trust our administration to be able to debate the merits of the different priorities. And if this is a priority, there may be a way it can get built with a combination of some grant funding and some reallocation of resources. I don't want to get into this debate here, but there is, it's not a black and white, it wasn't built in the budget, dead in the
But I
water.
already
We
have
had-
said that. I said that in a finance committee meeting when, somebody came to that finance committee meeting and suggested that the board needed to sharpen our pencils to find. I said, no, you guys, you tell me. We as a board and a town approved a bottom line operating budget. So if you guys can find a way to shuffle this around and find the money, but no one has come to us to say that.
We keep trying to bring it to the admin team meeting and suggesting that, asking, could we do this, could we do that? And we seem to today come across some bottom line issues with HR and job descriptions and impossibilities that the job can't even be offered the way or described the way it is.
Okay,
So-
then maybe I don't know if we
Okay, so
need to
that's a
talk about that in
separate
non-public.
conversation.
Right,
But so
Okay.
can the money be found among the school? I guess I would agree with Jen that it seems like I would have confidence that the school, if you guys have stated you need this, but we can't make money appear out of the sky. So where have you guys said this is where we're
We
gonna,
don't know
we're
the
gonna,
amount that we need.
we're gonna cut this, we're gonna take this, we're not gonna buy those books, we're not gonna like.
we've asked like, how much would it be to make up this difference?
Wasn't it
We
like
haven't got that.
15? Am
I
I
mean, I
wrong?
think part
just
of the
don't know.
challenge is also that there are other unplanned tech. I mean, if we're
Yes.
talking tech, right, we're also looking at Power School, which I don't think was really part of that budget either, and that's been a very big ticket item.
Yeah, but we can't
That is
just
also-
lay that on tech.
No,
That is
but
the
this
school
is-
because we let our, yeah.
But this is all part of this. In my opinion, I don't know, I think that there are a lot of moving parts to this, and so it is not simple for that reason. Do you have a suggestion?
As I said, I think there are a number of suggestions that are out there. It's a matter of putting those people together and letting them have a real conversation and come to an agreement. It's not for us to be debating, but.
Well,
you
we
know,
are supportive of the tech integrations. I mean, we
And-
made
and
that
so-
clear in a meeting. I don't understand why this hasn't happened.
I think we need to go into closed session. I'm not the
We
person
can't-
on
we
the board,
can't-
but
Can't go any further in
Okay.
public.
All right,
Well, so.
do we need to do anything else though? Can we do we have to go into non-public? You have minutes to approve. That might be a quick vote. we don't want to keep not
I've got
posting.
some, I think maybe you just call another meeting soon and because I do have quite a few comments on.
Well, so I would actually like to, I think that if anyone's really interested in approving minutes, we can still even do that at the very end. Because usually everybody is paying attention at that point anyway. No offense to the public or
So
to
they can
us.
stick around. Okay.
So with that, I would like to, do I have a motion to enter non-public?
I will make that motion.
Boylston at 9:39.
I'll second it.
Second by Glass.
Better that's what we do.
So public, thank you for attending. We will be moving into non-public.
I'm going to end this meeting now.
Yeah.
Is that correct?
I think so.
Okay.
So we tabling everything else, the minutes, the second readings and the first readings.
Are we tabling the minutes or we consider voting on those out?
Maybe we
I
should.
think we should table them. We can consider, but I think we should table
I
them
think we should.
in
You guys want to
the
table them?
reality.
It's the
of
first
it.
time I
Do it
read
next
through all the
week.
minutes meticulously. I'm
I
ready to
know.
vote and approve on them.
No, I have quite a few edits. You have edits to them? All right, then we will table them, I guess.
Okay, I'm going to end the meeting for all.